Alright, boys and girls, we're going to the junkyard today. We're gonna go get an intake air temperature sensor. It's cheap, it's easy, and it's not that cold yet in Wisconsin, so we're gonna go do it today because it's only 32 degrees today instead of negative 40, which it'll be in a couple weeks, so we're gonna go now. Alright, so I'm here now, walking around. I'm gonna go look to see if I can find the intake air temperature sensor. Don't know what I'm gonna pick it off of yet. Might look at some SUVs, some Blazers. Let's check it out. Alright, so this is the one I ended up picking. Just plucked it right out. All I needed was my hand and a wire cutter. Keep the plug, get the pigtail, wire it right in. It's a Buick with the 3800 in it. And this has the same sensor. Just right there in the intake. This is an Oldsmobile Alero. Same thing. Pontiac Sunfire, same thing. I broke the end off of that one, but same deal. Alright, so I did get two separate sensors. One from a Jimmy, one's from a Blazer. They're pretty much the same thing, but I'm just going to get them just to double check resistance, make sure everything's good. And that's something that you would want to do if you did get them off of a different vehicle, is make sure that the resistance is the same. Otherwise your reading might be a little bit off. So you just want to make sure that the resistance is pretty close or the same, so you're getting an accurate reading. They're going to be in a lot of different things. A lot of them without mass airflow sensors. A lot of times the mass airflow sensor has the intake air temperature sensor in it. The 5-wire mass are usually an intake air temperature sensor. Some have a 3-wire, and they might have a separate intake air temp sensor. You just have to look at the vehicle and find one, but they're all over the place, so it should be easy to find. Alright guys, so I'm on my way home now. Just wanted to say that it was $5 and $5.25 with the tax, so $5 for two sensors. So $2.50 for each sensor. That's not bad. Usually, like if you were to buy the sensor and the pigtail harness, everything new, you'd probably end up spending around $35 or $40 or more, depending where you got it from. So junkyard, $2. Okay, so basically on this thing we're going to take off this evap purge solenoid. This is basically an emissions function that recirculates gas vapor from the fuel tank, and it'll open this up and it'll suck it right into the intake. And we're going to get rid of this thing. And we open up this nice hole in the top. So we're going to take this little guy right here and we're going to jam it in. But it's a little bit too big, so we're going to have to ream this thing out a little bit, and then it'll fit in there nice and sweet. So instead of going around the intake, reaming that thing out, I'm just using a disc, sandpaper disc. Wrap it around, and I'm just twisting it like this. So I'm just going to twist this like this until it's down to about the diameter that I need it to be, and then I'll be able to stuff it right in there. Okay, so here's the hole. Here's the piece kind of sanded down a little bit, and you can kind of sand it at a little bit of a taper, and that thing's in there pretty nice. It's holding very well, so get it to a point where I can basically just kind of twist or tap it down, and then it'll go right into where it needs to be. Okay, so here we go. I took a little bit of black RTV, smeared it all around, making sure I got some on this top lip up here, so it should seal pretty well. A lot of it's going to push itself up as I try to get this thing in there. So I'm just going to give it a little bit of a twist as I put it in, and you can see it's starting to accumulate around the edge. So that should be pretty close. I'm going to give it a little bit of a tap. We got it all the way in now, and this nice RTV bead all the way around. seated all the way. And that thing is sweet. So I want to show you guys the resistance test on this sensor here versus the sensor inside the MAF. So this is the one of the ones I got from the junkyard, and I have this clamp meter set on ohms. You can use any other regular multimeter, anything that's gonna read ohms. So I'm gonna test the sensor, basically just probing the wires. All the sensor is a resistor, and it just changes with the temperature. So that's reading 4.7, 4.73, 4.74. That's in 1,000 ohms. So the 4.7 thousand ohms, that's what that's reading. So now let's look over at the MAF. This is the MAF sensor. You can see inside that little black ball inside there, that's the resistor, and that's what's going to be reading the intake air temperature. So there's two leads. You can see it inside here. Actually has a separate little circle around it, like it's removable. And there's two little pins in there, so that's what I'm going to be measuring. So I'm going to probe those pins, and we'll see what it reads. So 4.67. That's pretty close to the other 4.7 that we got before. I'm guessing this one is probably a little bit warmer for some reason. When it gets warm, the number gets lower. So 4.65, which is pretty close to the 4.7. Now if we go back to the other sensor, and we poke this guy again. So 4.69, which the other one was 4.65. So watch, I'll breathe on it a little bit. So that's blowing warm air on the sensor. And the resistance is actually coming down, which will tell the computer to run higher because it's going to see a higher voltage. So the way this intake air temperature sensor circuit works, it's sending a 5-volt reference signal from the computer to the sensor, and then based on the resistance changing from the temperature changing, it's sending a signal back to the computer after it goes through the sensor. So as the air gets warmer, the intake air temperature sensor is reading a lower resistance, which is sending more of that 5-volt signal back to the computer, and it's telling it to read a higher temperature. Just for giggles, have this all hooked up with the pigtail and the wiring hooked up to the multimeter, and it's reading 4.7. The other one is reading 4.68, 4.7. So they're very, very close. The other one's probably reading a little bit lower because I was just handling them with my hands. So they're probably reading a little bit warmer temperature versus sitting in the intake. All right, so now I want to show this digital thermometer inside the intake throttle plate. 64 degrees. 64 degrees on the IAT gauge, intake air temperature sensor gauge. So I'm gonna take these two wires here and I'll touch them together, and the gauge will go red and show 284, like it's tripped out. Basically it's shorted out. So just to show that the gauge is actually active and working, wanted to do that. And I will take this thing out, show you that it is scanning in real time. One hint was the red, but just to show you, I'll open the throttle plate and it is actually reading green on the gauge for the movement. So we got 64 degrees. 63 is dropping because it's colder actually in the garage right now than it is inside the intake. So I'll stick that guy back inside. So it just dropped to 62, colder outside in the garage. Now it'll go right back up on the back side of that plate. It's just a little bit warmer than it is in the garage. 64 degrees, right where it needs to be. Alright guys, so that was a little rundown on how to do the intake air temperature sensor from the junkyard. $2 part, $2 is what I paid for it. Very easy to install, and it reads within 1 degree of the actual intake air temperature confirmed with the thermometer. So nice and easy, pretty cheap, and I'm pretty happy with it so far. So thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video. Be sure to leave a comment. Subscribe if you're new. Have a good one.